Well, welcome to all our viewers watching this. We're honored to be joined by a longtime veteran of the transformational industry, Jeff Cosby. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you. I know you're as busy as ever, and I want to talk about your current work, but let's begin by going back to the beginning when you were a young man.
Oh man, going back a long time then.
Yeah, let's go back. Uh, you were going to college. When did you first become uh, attracted to or connected to any kind of transformation, enlightenment kind of work?
Wow. Well, it really began after I graduated university, and my girlfriend at the time um, did this training called LifeSpring, and that was in like December of '73, I think it was, or something like that. And afterwards, that's all she could talk about. And I'm a pretty conservative, or I should say, I was a pretty conservative guy, and skeptical. And so she said, "Well, you got to do it. You got to do it." And I was intrigued. I'm going, "What is this all about?" And I always remember the first time I went to an event where the trainer was kind of telling us about it. Um, and he's talking, and I'm sitting there and I'm going, I raised my hand. I said, "Well, how do I know this is going to work?" And he says, "Well, we don't really, because we've only done it one time. Uh, and it seemed like it was pretty good, but so that kind of blew everything up for me. I'm going, what am I getting myself into?" But so I did the training actually in February of 1974. And that was the beginning of my real journey into this transformational work. But it actually, on the other hand, it actually started much earlier. I was just, when you say this, I just thought of this experience that I had when I was pretty young. I was about uh, 12 years old. I don't even know why I'm saying this, but anyway, I was 12 years old, and I was fascinated with, and I guess what it is now is meditation. But I would sit on my bed at night, and I had this thought about that, how time was passing, and each time I would say, well, that moment just is no longer, and there's the next moment. And so I would meditate on this, on time, until I got to a place where it was like there was just no time. It was like I was just in this interesting space. And so that kind of started when 12, 13, 14, and then my friends, we always talked about, you know, philosophy and what's it all about and what's the purpose and why are we here. And so that actually began when I was all through school. So
And did you come up with that practice yourself, or were you guided into it somehow?
no, it was just one of those things. I don't know why I thought of it, but time fascinated me, and I'm going, and I always remember thinking, okay, that moment is no longer, and then the next moment, and then there was this experience of there was just no. I was there in the moment. I wasn't thinking about the past or the future or the next one, but I was there in the moment, and that's and so the first book I ever kind of read that was Baba Ram Das, Be Here Now. And it was like, wow, this is what I was experiencing. So so that was quite fascinating for me.
Yeah, that's powerful. So
Yeah.
by the time you got to the training, you were already in these kind of deeper questions about the nature of life and so forth.
Oh, absolutely. But the training was unique in that it brought um, a level of intimacy, a connection with other people. I mean, I was very good at thinking about things and being in my mind about it, and but to actually be in the experience with other people, that's what touched me about the LifeSpring training, is to be in an environment where you're interacting with other people in a way that would open up things that I never really thought about before. And so so to me, the intimacy was what was really powerful. And
Mm.
I always remember and I don't know if this is right day, because our memory does kind of fade, but I believe it was February 24th, 1974. It was a Sunday. It was a Sunday of the training. I have to go back and look if 24th is actually a Sunday, but I think it was. And that kind of blew kind of everything open. There was just a process that we did, and it was the experience of being connected with everyone. And and as I said, I grew up in a very Midwestern um, kind of, how would I say, very conservative environment. All this would be new. Um, but it was an experience of, in that moment of being there with all the people that I was there with, it's like I had an insight about what I wanted to do in my life. And I stood up, and I hadn't shared in the training because I was always observing. But it kind of got through to me. And I stood up and I said, I know what I want. And they said, what? And I said, I want to make a difference in the world. And I thought, and now when I think about that, I go, oh my gosh, crazy. But I went home, actually drove back. I was in Chicago, Illinois, and I drove back home, and I sat down with my parents and I said, I'm not going to take this job that I got out of the college. I said, this is the work I want to do. And 2 weeks later, I was working in Chicago. And so, and
Found
it's
it
never
all.
stopped since.
Yeah, well, that's like a pure example of finding your calling. And the good news is you heard it and you responded to it. So that's wonderful. Now,
Yeah.
I know somewhere in here soon after that, you did some work in India. When I say working on yourself,
Yeah.
where did that come in?
So that was like 1978, actually. I actually met a person that became a teacher, was actually the founder of, uh, of Mind Dynamics, which was the kind of what was before LifeSpring. So, and out of Mind Dynamics, there was a company called S that was started, and LifeSpring, and so a lot of things came from there. And the founder of Mind Dynamics, Alexander Everett, I met him, and I had a great connection with him, and we started to talk, and I started asking him about India because I was reading now. And he says, uh, you only go to India if you feel like you're called to go. He goes, don't just go as an interesting thing. And he goes, and if you ever feel like it's really what you want to do, he goes, I'll go with you. He goes, I've been a number of times, but be happy to go with you. And so I actually did. I called him up and I said, I'm really interested in going. And so we went to India, and I met, a number of people, Swami Muktananda, and Sai Baba. And I went to actually, Bhagwan Rajneesh was over in India at the time. Was kind of a strange guy, but but I actually learned a lot there. So I was there for about 6 weeks, just exploring and meditation and yoga and different trainings. So yeah, it's quite a learning experience for me to be in India, and have never been outside of the U.S. So that was my first venture outside the U.S. was in India.
Mm.
So it's not the first place you think of going, but it was great.
Yeah, there's some culture shock there.
Yeah.
Uh, I remember you telling me, would it be correct to say you almost got a meeting with Sai Baba?
I did meet with him. Uh, we were at it was a festival, and well, this is really I don't remember ever telling you that, but so it's quite a experience. There was about 4,000 people there, and we got there early in the morning on so like 4 a.m., 5 a.m. And so you just get there and you start and you're just chanting, and you're doing the different Indian chants. And I'm just kind of there with everybody. And they told me where he would come. And so I kind of sat pretty close. I was about maybe 10 yards away from where he would sit. And so at one point, and you get into the chanting, you get into the meditation, and it was really very beautiful. And then he walked out, and I know this may sound strange to some of the viewers here, but it was really like he was gliding across the ground, moving towards me, not towards me personally, but in my direction. And so I had asked somebody if I could meet with him, and they said, well, it's a festival, so you probably won't be able to have a meeting. And I said, okay. And so I was just meditating and being in the chant. And the next thing I know, I look up and he's standing right in front of me, and so that was kind of a shock. And he asked me where I was from, and I said the States, and then I asked him if I could meet with him. This is funny. And so here's somebody, Sai Baba is what some people would consider, a very high spiritual being, if not, God incarnate, so I looked up at him and I said, can I have a meeting with you? And he asked me, well, how long are you here? And I said, oh, I'm leaving tomorrow. And I remember thinking, here I am saying, look, can you meet with me? Because I got to go tomorrow. And, and he just looked at me and there was this look on his face, and I immediately got it. I go, if I really want to be with him, I will be here however long it is until I be with him. But I just kind of smiled, and then, he did a blessing, and it was just a really powerful experience for the next 30, 40 minutes, sitting there, just, tears coming down my face, and just this very euphoric feeling, and very beautiful. So
Mm.
I didn't know I ever told you that.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh
Only
man.
remember that.
Oh wow.
Uh,
Yeah, that never hadn't thought about that in a long time. But
Yeah, I think it's a great story about intention, and maybe you didn't get an extended private meeting, but you did have a connection with him,
well,
and it was
I
beautiful.
actually walked away and I said, this is it. I mean, I got what I came here for,
Yeah,
and just to be touched, not only physically but spiritually, and just in a way that was very transformative in itself in that few moments. And so, yeah, it was quite special.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and now we hear about such things as law of attraction and so forth, and uh, we could say it was just accident he walked up to you, but
Right.
I would say probably not.
Yeah. Yeah. It was,
And here you are all these years later, and I'm sure you have you have your own message that of Jeff Cosby, but I know you're still connected to his message of loving people and giving people space to find themselves and so forth.
now, one of the things that was attracted me to him was that he really was teaching oneness. And so oneness has become a very big part of my, I don't know, I wouldn't call it my teaching, but kind of my intention is to share with people what it really, and have the experience of oneness and how we can create that in our life. And so I was really struck by that, and oneness of all religions, and just, not the separation. And especially nowadays that we see, we're living in a time of incredible separation in all kinds of ways, whether it's politically, um, you know, just through race, through um, gender, through everything. We see each other as kind of how we're different instead of the oneness, the sameness. So that's what I find truly inspiring in the work that we do through
Yeah,
all these years, is that, and I've done it all around the world, in Europe and South America and US and all through Asia. And when people are in the training and in the experience of the training, they all get to the same place. And they don't get to a place that, I'm better than you, and they don't get to a place of how we're different. They get to the experience that we're all one, that we're connected, and that, we're all in it together. And so that is the message, I think, in this work that is so needed now, and which is one of the reasons why we kind of are coming together for this launch. This, what we're calling life upgrade, is that now's the time that we can bring people together. And and so I'm excited about that. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun and very powerful. Just before we leave India, people experience some of our exercises in our trainings as somewhat intense, but you went through some really intense exercises over there in India. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Wow. Well, yeah. Some of the meditations were very powerful, and it's hard to describe the meditations, but um, I there's a couple of different things. One is when it was a meditation I did on my own, actually, in when I was, where was I? In Ganesh Puri, in Swami Muktananda's ashram. And there's a place in that ashram where it's Swami Muktananda's master had lived there. And I believe this is I may may not have a whole thing right, but anyway, this building was, so it's in the middle of the desert and it was hot. I was there, so it was hot. But in this building, in this little house, it had been silent for 40 years or so. And so the only thing that happened in that room is people would meditate. And so I was, I was talking to someone there and they go, well, you ought to go in and you can just go in and meditate on your own. And I said, okay. And so I went in there and I had someone with me, and they stayed outside. And I said, well, I'll be a little bit. I'll be in there for, 20, 30 minutes, whatever. So I go in and I'm meditating and the energy was so incredible. And so I was just in there and I came out and the person said, well, what, gosh, you're in there forever. And I go, what do you mean? It was only like 30 minutes or so. She goes, no, it's been 4 hours. She goes, I was concerned. I almost sent somebody in to get you. So 4 hours being in that space. So being in the space of a higher consciousness and a higher energy brings us to that place. And I think that's the work what we keep creating with people in all of our trainings, is to be in a space that brings you to the next level of consciousness or awareness. The other one was a very intense process. It was 3 days of being asked a question. And so I was asked a question, and it was about 16 hours a day. You're asked the question, and the question was, who are you? Who are you? Who are you? And you're being asked that question again and again. And it's amazing all the things that we think we are, and all the things I thought I was, and I just keep saying them, and you think that there's going to be an end to that. That it just keeps going and going, and they keep asking the question. And then the question shifted a little bit to, it was, who are you? And then, what are you? And then, why are you? So 3 days. So who are you? What are you? Why are you? Very profound. And it got to the place of, I talk about in Mastery, training that your dad and I and a number of other people contributed to creating, but it's got to the place of nothing. There's nobody, there's no space, there's no time. That was like in a pure space of energy, of just being in the near nothing and everything all at the same time. So very powerful experience. I think one of the most transformative experiences in my life, besides the Life Spring training.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds powerful. And I think you were telling me that understandably, people were just having all kinds of reactions during this 3 days. And it was kind of bizarre, huh?
It was, you just know all stuff's going on, but you don't know what's going on because you're just in your own. But it was very, very powerful. And I think to get to that place in ourselves where we can let go of who we think we are, the story we have about who we are, what other people think we are, if you can let go of all that and just be. And it's not easy. It's not an easy thing, and life keeps pulling us out of that pure space. But I thought of an analogy about what it means is to have these transformational experiences are so important for us because it's like if you wanted to dye a piece of cloth, if you take a piece of white cloth and you would dip it in some blue dye, and it comes out and it's dark blue, and then it just kind of fades and it's kind of a light blue, and you got to dip it again, and to get the real rich color. So that's a little bit like what I think the trainings do. The trainings has you dip into this space of pure consciousness or awareness, and where you get outside of your story and all the things that happened and that all the disappointments and all the fears, and you get outside of that and you see the possibility that you are. And then it's like, wow, life opens up, and then you can go further. And then there's times that you need to kind of dip into it again, and that's one of the things we were saying when all of us as trainers got together and said, hey, wouldn't it be great if we just did some event where people could kind of dip into that, consciousness and be together and have that happen. So so that was a powerful experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know one of the things you've done over the years is train other trainers and mentor them. There's a story from when you were young that I sometimes use with trainers. So would you be willing to tell our audience about that story when you led your first communication workshop?
Well, there's so many different stories.
You were working with Livestream.
Okay, is this the one about where I really didn't know what to do, so I just asked questions?
Yeah, because you're like, where's the manual?
Yeah. Well, I've only been working for like a month. People have to remember that this transformational work started about in 73 or 69, 70 was Mind Dynamics, and then S, I think, started in 71, and then LifeSpring. And so it's just kind of evolving, this human potential movement that just started to evolve. And so I really didn't know anything. I was just there in it and saying, what do I need to do? And so they said, well, we're doing a workshop and we want you to get up and do a workshop on communication. And I go, what do I do? Where's the manual? They go, well, there isn't one. And so I just got up and I started to, amazingly, I just started to ask questions and say, what is communication? And we just started being in an exploration. And to me, that was a powerful learning because it wasn't about what I had to teach people, but it was more about that in the process of engaging with people and asking questions, that people could discover something. I mean, people came away from the workshop going, oh, I never really thought about that. Well, I hadn't really thought about it either. So it was like, we were kind of co-creating it. And I think that's a lot of what we've done in the trainings over the years. The trainers have been there to ask questions and to open up possibilities, but it's the engagement with each other that we're creating.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the common traps of the beginner trainers. They get hung up on what they're so-called presenting, right. And then they're not connecting with people, and it just becomes more like a lecture. So, and because they're focused on the presentation, I think that's what makes them so nervous. Whereas if they were more like what you did of, hey, let's be together and be in this question, they would probably be more relaxed.
Yeah. Well, that's what relaxed me because I was like terrified. My big fear when before I did the training, uh, was speaking in front of groups of people. It's like, I just didn't want to do that. And it was all, there's certain things that happen in our life, but there was a time very early in my life in school where I got up in front of the group and, everybody was laughing. And so it's like, I just realized, okay, speaking in front of groups is not a safe space to be. So I just didn't want to, speak in front of groups. And so that was really a fear. And becoming a trainer, of course, I had to overcome that. But I overcame it more because it wasn't about what I wanted to say, but more about engaging with people and asking questions and getting curious about their life and what it is that they want. And then things kind of come from that. They flow from that. And it's really, I find it just really engaging and exciting for me to be in that environment with people, because I come alive in that, and they do too. So,
Yeah, definitely. Now, you were with LifeSpring in, I would say, probably its peak of popularity and success. If you remember those times in the 80s, what was it about the context that LifeSpring as a team and our connection with graduates that made it work so well? And what's that magic formula that we had at that time?
wow. Well, I hadn't really thought about that. I think there's, so if I was to say, I think there's a couple of things that really stand out when I look at it. And that is, I do believe that in everybody that I met at LifeSpring, all the trainers I met, all the people that were there, it was like people were being called to do something. I mean, we were not there for a job. We were not there because, none of us were there for a job. It's like, because as much as we worked, as little as we were paid in those days, it's like, it wasn't being there for the job. We felt like we were on a mission, that there was something bigger than ourselves. And so that's really, and I think I feel like that was true with everybody I met. All the trainers that are going to be with us in this event, John Webb and Royce and Jack Swizik, and then there's so many other trainers that I can mention too, but they were all there for that same purpose, and so that was one thing. The other thing is that even though we were all I think most people would say back then, the trainers had quite a bit of ego. There was a lot of ego, but not in the training. It's like, yeah, we were, we all wanted to be better than the other and all wanted to do better. But it was in the training, we held the training as kind of sacred. This is a space for you, the participant, to be in. And in that space, people were honored and valued and held to something bigger than themselves. And I think the processes that were created in LifeSpring, the flow of the training itself, that as trainers, if we got ourselves out of the way and just facilitated that process, that it opened things up for people. So, I just think, that, and I think the people that mainly your dad, brought in, recruited, were some of the best people I've ever known. So it was great. It was
Yeah,
a great time in life, from the late 70s, early 80s. It was like everything was on fire. We were, all around the country, and it was fantastic. So,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Now, I know eventually you did a lot of work in Hong Kong and some in Europe as well, and you've done a lot of work in China, I suppose. Let's talk about China a little bit, because with globalization, we're obviously we're all connected, and I've also worked in China a lot, and I know the Chinese people love transformation and they're hungry for it. What have you learned about China and about how they're able to receive transformation?
Oh, okay. Let's see. So I think there's good news and bad news, which I could say about every place, actually. But when I think about the the great news about China and most of all the Asian cultures, whether it's Japan, whether it's Taiwan, Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, Indonesia, just all these places. There is a culture of learning, and they are eager to learn. I mean, it's amazing. It really. This is why in the U.S. we need to be very conscious, because we've lost some of that. I think there was an eagerness in the U.S. After the World War, this 50s, 60s, 70s was this whole growth and learning, and we were hungry. I think that's how China is now. They have they've always had a culture of learning and to hold people to a high level of rigor about learning. So for that reason, I think transformation really is very powerful there. And at the same time, there's the kind of the bad news is that there's some restriction on personal responsibility and on just some limitations on people that kind of stop the transformation as well. So on one hand, it feels like people are wanting to open, and then on the other hand, there's also a force kind of, okay, but you got to do it this way, and it's got to be, So I think there's some limitations, but the people that I've met, is true everywhere though. Everybody I meet in every culture, when you get to their heart, to who they really are, it's powerful, it's beautiful, it's open, it's vulnerable, it's it's what will make a difference if we could create that everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I think particularly in the mainland, it dawned on me at one point when I was working with a specific group that in America, I think we take it for granted that people are brought up in a conversation of you're special, and even people who end up being whatever, truck drivers or, but they're brought up as if you're a special individual and you're meant to be extraordinary. And I think for a lot of people in China, that's kind of a foreign concept to them, that they as an individual are special and can be extraordinary. What do you think about that?
Well, this is not really China, but this for me, just share an experience. When I first went to Asia, first place I went was Japan, and I was in Japan for 5 years. And the one thing that I love the Japanese culture, and I loved Japan. I was there, yeah, someplace I could live. But it's their culture of being team and working together and all of that is really fantastic. But when we would get to, especially like in the advanced course we used to do, where people would get to this place of a contract of who they are and make an I am statement, I am whatever. That was like the big breakthrough, because watashi wa, it's like I am, and to declare who they are was just like opening the lid, and it was really beautiful to see that, and to see that ownership, that they're not just a part of the team, they're not just part of a group, they are an individual themselves, and I think that's a tough thing in China, because the culture is one of, you sacrifice yourself for the good of the whole, which, I mean, as you and I know, about distinctions, is that a distinction opens up possibility, but there's also closes off others, And in China, they have this willing to sacrifice my own individual freedom or individual wants or needs for the good of the whole. Well, in this time of dealing with coronavirus, that's a very powerful thing. And they were, in a way, able to get control. In the US, we're still arguing over, no, I have my right to not wear a mask and I have a right to do this or do that. Yes, you do. And there are consequences to that as well. So I think every culture has its those things that open us up, and it also has the things that limit us. And so if we can become aware of those, that's why what I loved about being in Japan, and then in Hong Kong and Singapore and China and Argentina, and over in Europe and the Netherlands. You see different cultures, and you can see how you can open up possibilities, and also where are the limitations. And so, that's what I find beautiful about the trainings.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, great. Well, let's talk about your work with the Avalon Group. I know you've been working in Asia. I know you've also done corporate work in Europe a lot, I think. Of course, everything's changed with this virus and sort of lockdown and online and so forth. But what can you tell us about your current work?
Well, I've been working for the last few years, and it's kind of amazing, because I think about it, and I realize that since like 1987, I've worked almost exclusively outside the U.S. There was a time here in the U.S. for a couple of years where I did some corporate work with a couple of big Fortune 100 companies and the executive teams and executive coaching and all that. which I love, and is a whole different thing than personal transformation work. So my first love is more the personal transformation work. I would say that now, or the last few years, I've worked mostly on developing trainers, developing coaches that will continue on with this work. And that's what I love doing now more than anything. So I do a mentoring program. I've got like people that I'm mentoring now that are in the work. I do a lot of coaching. I do a lot of coach training, training people to be coaches. So I'm really more, I'm at the point in life where I'm going, what's next? Which is kind of funny, but because I'm turning, next year will be 70. So, and I'm clearly not done. I don't want to be done with, with my contribution in the world, but it's looking at, what do I do next? So, but my love is to work with people that want to take a deep dive into their own transformation. And one of the things I'm getting a lot of joy out of is working with people on a long-term basis, like usually a 6 month to a year mentoring program, where I'm mentoring them in just the work of transformation and transformational technology, consciousness, energy, and doing lots of different things besides coaching, but also a lot of breath work, which is a whole new thing I started to do when I turned 60 about 10 years ago. So I'm open, and I'm just sharing wherever, and I'm continuing to do work over in Asia, but now I have to do it through Zoom. But we're all learning to do things in new ways. So
Yeah. Okay, great.
You say that. I mean, I say that, and I don't know why this just popped into my mind. But one of the, I think, biggest learnings I got out of the training was to really get outside of what's comfortable, and nowadays, none of us, or maybe some people, a lot of us are not comfortable with what's happening, and we don't know. There's not certainty. We don't know where we're going, what's going to happen. And I used to love certainty. I used to love, the comfort of that. And when I was started doing what we used to do as guest events, this is in the 70s, early 70s. And I would go and do these guest events, and the person that would come with me, her name was Lydia Quinn. She was 72 years old, grandmother, and she was just at a school, used to be a school teacher, and she was just great. And I was 23, 24 years old, and I didn't know anything. So we would go do this event. And I would be very formal and want to do things, everything had to be perfect. And so this one day they say, yeah, we're doing a guest event at a school. And I go, okay, great, So I go to this guest event, and I pull up to the building, and the building says play school. And I realized that this is like a school for little kids. So we walk in the room, and all there were the little kids for chair, chairs for little kids. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, oh my God, we can't do this. And she goes, no, don't worry about it. They'll love it. This will be great. And I'm going, and I'm all panicking, what are people going to think? And I tell you, it was one of the best guest events I've ever done. I'll never forget it. We had 25 people there. We had 22 people that signed up for the training, and it was, it was just fantastic. But it was because we all were out of our comfort zone. The students were sitting there and their knees up to their chest, and I'm there looking at them, and I'm like laughing in my mind, thinking, "What am I doing?" But when we get outside of what's comfortable, life can be a whole lot, different.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great story. I can picture it now.
Oh,
Well, so let's talk a little bit about our event coming up in October.
yep.
I know we're working with the whole team to put all the details together, but what would you say to the audience who's considering this, or even if people are already signed up, maybe they want to share it with people? What would you feel comfortable saying is going to be available in this event?
Well, I think the main thing is that, everybody that's going to be there, in some way, I believe, is being called to be there. There's all of us that got together as trainers, there was a group of us, and we said, hey, wouldn't this be great? And we're all just kind of being a part of this and creating something. And not only that, but the people that are going to come, they're going to bring their life, and we're going to come in this event together. And to me, it's to be in that kind of energy is what is transformative. It's really not about me, a trainer, or you, or John Webb, or Jack Swizik, or Marcia. It's not about us. We're there because I think all of us felt like, what can we do at this time? What is going on for people? And I see people around where I live, and I mean, parents are going through a lot. I mean, how do they handle school on Zoom, and the kids are home and they're trying to work, and I mean, the stress that a lot of families and people are under, loss of jobs and uncertainty. So I think there's a lot of factors that are having an impact on people. And my thought is, if we can come together and be in the conversation of possibility, of who are you, let's remind ourselves of who we are, and I always have this expression is that, we're creative, resourceful, whole, and unique. So if we can kind of bring people to that experience again, that everyone is creative and resourceful, we can figure it out. We can figure out how to have our life work, in whatever the times are. So I think it's that. I think I really want people to come there with an intention to have it be a great event, not to come there to say, what am I going to do for you? I'm there to do whatever I can for people. But at the same time, if we come in there together saying, what can we contribute? How can we contribute to each other? I think we'll create, a beautiful experience together. Yeah.
Well, I think that's beautifully said. And I'll just say, for everyone watching this, we invite you to come join us, come join the spirit that Jeff was talking about, of collaboration and mutual discovery and connection with each other, and share this video with anyone you think would enjoy it. And with that, I'll just say it's been a pleasure talking with you, Jeff, and it's been great to hear about your journey of transformation, continual transformation that you're still on.
Yes.
And, really appreciate you taking the time.
It's great. It's great to be with you, and I'm looking forward to being with whoever shows up. And we look forward to lots of people being there and being in the spirit of true discovery and learning, and it's time to take our life to the next level. You know, what's next? So great. Thanks, John. Thanks for the interview, and look forward to being together.
All right. Can't wait. All
All
right.
right.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Bye.